Ryan, welcome to Millionaire University. Super excited to have you on the show today, and we're going to talk a lot about franchising, your specialty. So thanks for joining me today and being willing to open up the book and teach us a chapter out of it.
Yeah, Kirsten, thank you so much for having me. It's just such a great pleasure to be here.
Amazing. Okay, so give us a little bit of your backstory. I know I have so many entrepreneurs who come on here, and a lot of times the thing they're doing now is not the thing they necessarily started with. So maybe give us a little bit of your coming of age story and how you ended up doing franchising, being a franchise consultant.
Yeah, well, I spent the better part of close to 14 years in the corporate world. And I was running sales teams for technology services and consulting companies, and frankly, it had just really great job. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the job itself or the people that I worked with, but eventually got to a point in my career after spending some time, started trying to climb the ladder and so forth, like so many people do, and just really began to look in the mirror and start thinking about what else is there. I'm not the most fulfilled in this job, and I'd really like to look for ways to take control of my life, so to speak, and take control of my time. And at that point in my life, I was starting to, my wife and I were starting to think about starting a family. And it also went into, okay, what's life going to be like when kids get here? And, I want to have as much time as possible to spend with those kids. And I was just, I was in a mindset of just wanting something very different from a lifestyle standpoint than what I was experiencing in my corporate life. And so about 5 years ago or so was when my wife and I started to seriously start thinking about what kind of business opportunities might be out there that we could invest in. And we'd always kind of had that entrepreneurial itch. We'd been together for a long time, and ever since the early stages of our relationship, I remember having conversations around like, oh, it'd be cool to, be a business owner, and even if it's for superficial reasons at that point. But it's just one of those things that continued to evolve over the years. And we began to uncover, more and more reasons and passions for wanting to go down that path. And discovered the world of franchising, and it was, ultimately a really good fit for us and our goals. We had started some things from scratch in the past, or tried to start some other things from scratch, and had some success and had some failures. But we really found that franchising was a good fit for us because of the support system that it offered from the franchisor, as well as just all of the processes and systems being there, and the roadmap being laid out that we could just pick up, execute, and try to enjoy some success. So
Cool.
we ended up investing in an emerging quick service restaurant brand, and ended up being a really great choice for us for a number of reasons. But that was our first foray into franchising. And fast forward to today, I'm looking to take what I've learned and share it with as many people as I can, and provide as much value to people as I can as they're considering the same path, mistakes that I've made along the way, lessons that I've learned. I just want to transfer that knowledge to people as much as I can.
Cool. So tell me a little bit about your first franchise experience. Were you coming into this with, okay, we have a chunk of money here because we've been working in the corporate world, and we want to take that and turn that into something so we can walk away from it? Do you recommend, and do you feel like, I think this can be a belief system people have, you have to have a bunch of money to get started with a franchise. So what was that experience like for you? And was it a big, scary investment? Was it kind of a mid-level? And just kind of talk us through the beginning stages of investing in something that already exists versus all of the blood, sweat, and tears you put into building your own startup.
Yeah. First of all, that is sort of a common misconception that, franchising is only for the big investors or the ultra wealthy. You do have to have some money, of course, to invest, but it's not nearly as much as what the average person might think if they've never looked into franchising before. For us, I would categorize it as a mid-level investment. It was around $200,000 that we invested into our business. The accessibility to funding and all kinds of different creative avenues for getting a business funded. It's much more prevalent today than it ever has been.
So, and with that being said, so you don't have to have that amount set aside, work like 20 years, set aside enough money. You're talking about getting small business loans. Is that a complicated process, or did it used to be? Is it something that's a little bit easier? I know you said it's not quite as tricky as it once was. So is that the path that most of the people you work with take, is getting funding to get that started?
It's gotten easier. Fortunately, there are organizations out there now that specialize in helping franchisees get funded through channels like SBA, or putting together a vehicle that allows someone to roll over retirement funds into a business investment. So it's what used to be a fairly complex process, and frankly one that was not accessible to the average person, has become much simpler and much more accessible. And so that's a win for everybody, I think.
So are you primarily helping people with brick and mortar franchises? I know there's like so many different things, but is there a specific type that you would recommend, especially right now in the era that we're in, that are doing well, certain industries that you have seen that are maybe the best to invest in?
Yeah, we're really seeing a boom in service-based businesses. And there's a few different models that I'll try to point out here. The first one that I see commonly is, what I would call a self-employment model, or solopreneur type of business model, where, you're basically working, full time in the business. There's no brick and mortar or anything like that. You're providing some type of professional service to people. The overhead's very low, and the investment is also relatively low. That's one model. Then beyond that, you have service-based models that do have some kind of brick and mortar location, whether it be a showroom or some type of office that potential customers or clients can come visit you at. The reasons for that could be numerous, of course, but those are the two types of service-based models that I see most often, and we're really seeing a rise in those types of models. Brick and mortar retail can be expensive, and there are, of course, risks that come along with that, having a lot of inventory on hand and a number of other things. But the options available in the service space, whether that be think home services, or B2B services, industrial services, it could be any number of things. The options within that space have become more and more numerous as the years have gone on.
Yeah. Can you give some examples of the first that doesn't necessarily have the office space, or just some actual examples? I'm like, I could probably think of a couple, but I'm curious. Just give us some tangibles.
Yeah. So think along the lines of maybe somebody that's doing like B2B consulting, and they have transferable skills from, being in a corporate career for a while, and they want to go off and do something on their own. That could be any number of things, of course, but one specific example that I can think of off the top of my head is like a cost reductions analyst. There's a franchise out there that will teach an individual, how to go out and market those services and be successful in the market. And you get access to their brand and all of their training systems and marketing systems and all of the things that you need to make that business successful. But more times than not, with a model like that, it's going to be something along the lines of, B2B services, something that you can do, work from home, do from a laptop, over the phone, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And the advantage to you as like the service provider is not having to go build out the entire infrastructure. I'm thinking, I don't know if this qualifies as this, but like a travel agent, that's kind of making its new surge. I have a couple of friends who do that. Then they don't have to pay for their own insurance, their own overhead costs with that. They're just paying to be an agent within the company. So is that kind of the same, along those same lines, or examples of...
Exactly. Yeah, that would be another example that sort of falls within that same bucket. That one being a little bit more consumer focused, of course, but lots of similar options like that in that space as well.
Okay. So tell me, I'm just curious. I love to look at things from all angles, from the franchisor. Now I can't. The one who actually owns the franchise.
The franchisor.
What is the advantage there? Yes, franchisor. Thank you. I knew. Yeah. So when they are facilitating things like this, like the advantage to them is obviously they're going to be able to make money because they're multiplying themselves and they're having people pay these fees, these one-time fees, these ongoing fees. where's the breaking point for them in an industry like that where they have so many costs and liabilities to where it's worth it to bring people on? Is it just a numbers game and they want to have as many people as they can?
Yeah, I mean, I think you want to be careful about oversaturating. You don't want to you don't want your existing franchisees to be cannibalizing one another, and the balance is going to be different, just depending on the franchisor and depending on the market for those services. But that's an excellent point. I mean, it's people can sell services across vast ranges of geography. People aren't limited to their local market anymore. I won't pretend to know how to quantify that exactly for any given franchisor, but I think that's certainly something to keep in mind for anyone that's investigating a franchise like that, is to, look at the market saturation that might be existing for that service and for that brand, as well as what are the differentiators? If it's a travel agency, okay, there's lots of travel agencies out there. What's making this one particularly different, and how is that going to set you up for success? I think it's going to be extremely important for a model of that nature.
Yeah. So I know I'm approaching this with a little bit of understanding, but for our listeners, I kind of glazed over that. There are the advantages to going with the franchise model instead of starting your own. So can you address some of those maybe more specifically and give some of those perks and things that you should consider comparing the two of starting your own and aligning with a franchise opportunity?
Yeah, well, I'll kind of go back into why we decided that franchising was right for us, and I kind of alluded to this a minute ago. But for us, it was we wanted to create an asset, right? We wanted something that would serve the lifestyle and the income that we were looking to have out of a business, not the other way around. We didn't want to place ourselves into a business to work 80 hours a week and it be, this constant grind of trying to, get things going. And that was just what we were looking for at the time. But there's also the person that is on the other side of that. They're like, I want to create my own thing. I want this to be my baby. It's going to be my own creation. I want to have complete control over the brand and the operational direction of the company. I want all of it to be my say. I don't want anyone to tell me how to run my business. That person needs to go out and start their own business. For somebody that is okay with following a model, following some rules and guidelines within a brand, they don't want to, create something completely from scratch. They don't want to reinvent the wheel, that sort of thing. But they are looking for an asset that can support their lifestyle and their income goals. That's the person that is a good match for franchising.
Okay, cool. Because there are a lot of things. I think if anybody listening to the show has listened to any number of episodes, I mean, you don't have to listen to many to hear. We're not promising this is going to be overnight success or easy. There's a lot that goes into building a business, and you can basically just multiply that by 5 to 10, what you think you're going to have to do, because there are so many things you don't know, and that's not to be discouraging. It's just to be realistic. And I think you nailed it in comparing the two, because I'm even thinking about different things that I've done where sometimes it just sounds so much more freeing and empowering to get going because you genuinely just want to help people and you don't really care about all of the little nitty gritty things. You don't care to figure out your own brand colors and figure out your own messaging and whatever that might be. I'm thinking more in terms of me as a service provider, a digital creator. And that can be really, really appealing for people who just want to do their thing. They just want to hone in on the craft that they have, on the specialty they have, and they want the perks of being a business owner without necessarily having to go through all of the formation of the business. And I think you'd probably agree with this. There's so many things you have to learn to only do one time when you're forming a business. And why do that? Why not save the time to step into that? Somebody's already created all those pieces for you. You never need to know how to do that. You're not missing out on anything unless you have this desire to build business after business after business. It's not necessary.
Yeah, that's kind of the whole point of franchising, right? But I love what you said a second ago. I think we need to be very clear with people to ensure that we're talking about franchising in an ethical way. Yes, you're getting the system that's been proven, hopefully many times over. You're getting a brand that is hopefully recognizable. You're getting training and all sorts of other resources that come along with this investment. But that does not mean that you're not working hard. You
Mm-hmm.
have to execute on these things. It's not a passive investment. It's not done for you. I would even call it turnkey. You have to get this thing set up successfully, and you have to be the one that goes out and executes on the business model. Even if it's a
Mm-hmm.
semi-passive model where, or an executive model where you're going to hire somebody eventually to run the day-to-day for you. This is not a hands-off investment for anyone that is looking for something that's passive or doesn't want to have their hands in the business. I'm going to generally have a difficult time recommending that they get into franchise ownership. This is for people that want to be in business,
Mm-hmm.
and have some type of engagement in their community and within their business.
Yeah. So, and maybe there's different opinions out there. Are you seeing like people who would say the opposite, like, oh yeah, this is a great passive investment opportunity and you can just hire people to run it, but you're kind of the opinion, don't get into it if it's not something that you actually want to manage and run, at least to a certain extent, right? Like it is still a business you're taking on. It's not something you're just like real estate investment. You're just putting money and letting somebody manage it. It's something that can only be as successful as the energy that you put into it.
100%. I mean, and any business owner can attest to this, franchise or not. But the moment that you take your hands off the business, even if you've got a great team in place, I mean, it's inevitable. Some things are going to start to slip.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody is going to care about that business as much as the owner does, as much you as the owner. And so, yeah, no, I'm 4 years into owning our franchise, and I hesitate to even quantify this because I don't want to create, expectations or anything like that
Mm-hmm.
and preconceptions in people's minds. But, fast forward to today, I spend easily less than 10 hours a week on the business, but I have my hands in some very important aspects of the business. I would never want to completely take my hands out of the business. I enjoy running it. B, I know what would happen if we started to make that mistake. And
Mm-hmm.
I just think that that's something that we in the franchising world need to be very clear with people about.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned something too. You enjoy it. You feel like that is a pretty important factor that somebody should consider. Because a lot of times, we might have ideas and we see the potential for a business that's not necessarily our passion project, but we can make a lot of money doing it. Do you see more success with people who actually enjoy the industry they're in and the business they're starting than those who are just doing it for the income?
I suppose it could be a factor, but I also recommend that people not necessarily, there's nothing wrong with enjoying the industry that you're in, but that is not a prerequisite in my mind.
Mm,
You want to focus on finding a business that is going to align with your skills and your
mm-hmm.
goals for your lifestyle and your income. When I say I enjoy it, the business that I own is a small quick service restaurant, and it's not that am necessarily passionate about the food that we serve. The product is great. I do love the product, but what I enjoy is running the business. I enjoy
Mm,
being a business owner and leading teams and creating culture within that team and coming up with new ideas for marketing and those types of things. That's what I really enjoy about running the business.
Well, I know you're doing this with your wife, so that's a partnership in and of itself. But do you come across people who go into this where it's more of a partnership if somebody has the funds and somebody has more of the passion or the interest in running the business? And is that something you recommend or you've seen be successful?
Yeah, I see that rather commonly, actually, and it certainly can be successful. You get into business with a partner. I think you want to make sure that your lanes are clearly defined, right? That would be my
Mm-hmm.
first piece of advice. Who's doing what in the business? Is one person just a silent investor, or are both of you going to have your hands in the business? And if that's the case, be very clear about whose responsibilities or what. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's certainly a common way for people to get into business. You've got somebody that maybe has a great business acumen and skills, but they don't have the entire initial investment on hand, and they'd rather not go get some big loan. Maybe they're okay with giving up a little bit of equity in their business for somebody to come in and help fund it. And I think that's a great way for people to get started.
So walk us through some of the steps. I know we talked a little bit about market research and just knowing your saturation point and things like that. And it sounds like we don't have to have this huge burning passion for running a quick service food business. We just might need to have passion for being an entrepreneur, being a business owner. So what are some other things? Take us through that whole process even in the process of vetting, like what things to consider when you're trying to choose a franchise.
Yeah, well, just from a process standpoint, I mean, every franchisor is going to have a unique process, right, that they take people through when they're evaluating them as a potential partner, and the franchisee is evaluating them as a potential investment. With that said, there's kind of a general process that most of them tend to follow at a high level. Usually, the first engagement that you have with a franchisor is going to be, some type of, high-level discovery or introductory call where, you're learning a little bit more about that brand, what they're all about, some about their values, that sort of thing, just to see if there's an initial good fit there. And from there, a second conversation is usually going to entail something along the lines of what the investment parameters look like for that business, how much you can expect to need. Sometimes that call will also include a discussion around what we call financial performance representations, where they'll talk through how some of their other franchisees are performing. Some of that information has been documented and can be shared with potential investors as well. Usually from there, they will share what's called the FDD, or the franchise disclosure document. And that's a legal document that every franchisor is required to make available to any potential investor. And it details many things about the franchise, including, again, investment parameters, financial performance representations, any litigation that franchisor may have been involved in the past, existing information about existing franchisees, information about franchise units that have closed, territory availability, and the list sort of goes on. But that document is generally shared with investors at that stage. And then from there, assuming there's still interest on both sides, you tend to start moving a little bit more quickly down the path of thinking, is there territory availability in my area? What kind of territory would I be interested in? Do I want one territory, two territories? And you start to solidify your thinking around what your strategy will be on that part of the investment. And then, usually if things are checking out at that point, both parties will agree to attend what's called a discovery day or confirmation day or meet the team day. Everyone kind of has their own terminology for it. But this is where you go and you actually travel to the franchisor's headquarters, if they have a physical headquarters somewhere, and spend some time with the leadership team, getting clarity on any outstanding questions and that sort of thing, and just really getting a good handle on what it would be like to actually be in one of these businesses on a day-to-day basis. And that's usually, at that point, you're kind of nearing the end of the process, right? From there, they're going to share with you the franchise agreements and any other terms that might be necessary to begin to finalize the process. Part of my job is to be at somebody's side down that entire path, making sure that they're asking the right questions, becoming aware of the right information, getting all the clarity that they need, access to funding resources if they need help with that, access to other professionals such as attorneys and that sort of thing if they need help reviewing agreements or just getting general advice. And so I'm with that person until they decide either, hey, yes, this is a great business, I think I'm going to go ahead and move forward, or this isn't for me and we're going to part ways and go in another direction.
Yeah, cool. So earlier on, you mentioned territories, and I know we've discussed how doesn't have to be exclusively brick and mortar businesses. So when we talk about that, we're meaning like literally just saturation points or regions where that service might not exist or might not exist heavily. There's actually room for opportunity and growth there. Am I right in that? Because we're not just looking at actual real estate availability, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so just depending on the business model or the industry, they're going to define territories a little bit differently. For, a home cleaning business, or some other home services company, it might be, number of households in any geographic region. Or, it could be, if it's a business to business type of concept, then, how many how many potential business customers would be available in any given radius. But yeah, it's a great point. I mean, everyone's going to define it a little bit differently based on what their actual business is. And that's a good thing. It should be defined differently.
Yeah. Do you see there being like more than the average person might assume in franchise opportunities out there? Like, are there more and more companies that have gone that route to provide the franchise path for people than there used to be?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So much more than what, 75% of the time when I have an initial conversation with somebody, the sort of the preconception is that franchising equals fast food. Can you get me into a Dunkin' Donuts or, a Subway or, something along those lines? And there's good reason for that. I mean, those businesses are around every corner and, they're highly visible and people see them on a regular basis. But just about any type of business under the sun is being franchised these days. And so people are oftentimes surprised to learn about all the different industries that are out there. Some unique ones. I became involved in one more recently. It was like detailing for private aircraft. This company will go out and perform detailing services for aircraft and cleaning and do paint jobs and that sort of thing. So that's just one example of what's out there. I mean, there are so many different types of businesses and industries, and there's a franchise concept in virtually all of them.
Yeah. Wow. Well, which is really good news to know if you don't, like we said, you don't want to have to go through the formation from the very, very ground up, find something that's kind of validated. So with that process, when obviously you have to do your market research, they're providing you all of this data and information about what's typically happened within their company, other franchisees, how successful they are, ones that have closed, things like that. But it's still on you. And I'm sure this is where you come into the process too, to do that research into whether it's regional or other factors to consider. Like, do I have the assets that I need for this to be successful? Maybe it is, do I have access to more funding for brick and mortar? Because that's not included in the franchise cost. You still have your own cost to operate and run the business, hire people, things like that. So what are some of those other things that people need to consider for their own research outside of just the information they're getting from the franchisor?
Yeah, great question. Well, validation is where the rubber really meets the road. Any information that a franchisor provides to a prospective investor is hopefully good information, but you never want to take it completely as gospel, right? If you were buying any other type of business, you would want to do your due diligence, and it's no different in franchising. It's so validation is where you get the opportunity to go out and speak with existing owners of that brand. And what's unique about that part of the process is that virtually anything can be asked and discussed in that space with other owners, whereas franchisors a lot of times are limited in what information they can provide to you just from a legal standpoint. Their attorneys are advising them to be careful about what information is being shared so that they don't get sued at some point down the road by a franchisee that said, oh, well, you said I could make this much money and now I'm only making this much money and that's your fault. But when you get a chance to talk to other current owners of that business, you get the opportunity to ask questions like, what's your monthly revenue? What kind of profit margins do you have? How long did it take you to break even? What's your relationship like with the franchisor? Are you getting the level of support from them that they told you would get? What things have surprised you about this business? What things would you go back and do differently now that you've been in this business for X amount of time? What kind of advice would you give to somebody who is, thinking about investing in this business? Here's my situation. I work a full-time job. Do you think I can do this business on the side, or is it going to be too much? So that's where that is an incredibly valuable part of this process for potential investors and where they can really get a lot of the clarity that they need.
Yeah. Well, and even after you have invested, like if you've decided you're going to go ahead and move forward, you still have access to that pool, not just from the franchisor, right? Are a lot of these places very collaborative where you have community, you have access to continued education and information from people because they're not your competitors per se, right? Like these are people who are in the same business as you. So there's a lot of masterminding that goes on. That's also a huge perk in the franchise world.
Yes, absolutely. And it's more prevalent in some businesses than others. It just depends on how many franchisees that particular system has, how mature the system is, But yeah, to your point, a lot of franchisees end up forming committees, or what we call, franchise advisory councils, where they will group together and meet on a regular basis and discuss what's working, what's not working, how we can support each other better, idea sharing, masterminding, and oh, by the way, are there any concerns that we're having with the franchisor that we can, potentially go and address as a group and take it from a unified type of stance. So yeah, those types of collaborations absolutely exist, and incredibly invaluable, for existing owners.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so anything else that we need to know when you're on this path to looking into the franchise route? You've done the market research, you've gone all in. What are some other things just to think about in terms of what this experience is going to be like? And, obviously it's going to change depending on the type of franchise you have, but any universal laws, things that people want to mentally prepare for?
Yeah, there's a few things. I think just when you're speaking with the franchisor, keeping in mind that old adage of, if something sounds too good to be true, it very well may be. And so, you've got to protect yourself throughout this process. And I will also say that, I think people need to be somewhat cautious about going into a franchise, again, thinking that they can just do it, completely as a side business, keep their job. There are 100% opportunities out there that exist for that, but the options are a little bit more narrowed. It's not every franchisor is going to be able to offer that. So it takes a lot of discretion and spending time with somebody that knows how to narrow down those options and is aware of the opportunities that are out there that can, help bring those to the table for you.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing is just, the realities of business ownership. It's, even though you're a franchise owner, it doesn't make owning a business easy necessarily. I think it makes certain things more efficient, and there are a lot of benefits that come along with that. But at the end of the day, the buck still stops with you. You're the owner of that business. There's certainly a lot of support available, but you have ultimate responsibility for making sure that business is successful. And I think that's something that people just need to have a firm grasp on whenever they're coming into this process.
Yeah. Well, I would love to hear, just maybe it doesn't have to be rapid fire, but just I know you said there's a lot more business opportunities in the franchise world than there ever really have been. I would love to hear more, just to kind of open our eyes to all the different opportunities that are out there, different industries, maybe some specific businesses within those industries that you're seeing that are up and coming, or just things that people might not have considered that they could look into with a franchise.
Yeah, there's just a vast number of opportunities out there. But what things that are popular right now, there's a lot of health and wellness out there. I mean, people are more conscious about their physical health, the mental health, what they're eating and how they're spending their time, all of those sorts of things. So the market has responded to that. So there's a lot of opportunities in fitness and healthy eating, various types of therapies out there, that sort of thing. We've really seen a boom in those types of concept, over the last, 5-10 years. But beyond that, you kind of hear the term, boring businesses a lot. There's a lot of really great opportunities. You think about things like home cleaning or window cleaning. Everything's got to be cleaned, right? There's another one that I've got somebody investigating right now. It's a hood cleaning service for commercial kitchens, and that's something that has to be done by law on a regular basis. And so there's all sorts of things like that people just think, oh yeah, that's an essential business, right? Didn't realize that there was a franchise opportunity in that space. So there's a lot out there.
Cool. So I want to talk about that one specifically too, like the hood cleaning business and some of these that are a little smaller home services too. I know we've talked through the advantages of not having to go through all of the steps to form a company, but what are some of the other things? Like, because I'm thinking, do you already have the brand established so you can kind of go on the reputation of that brand too and not feel like, oh, I'm Joe Schmo business. I just launched this and this is my first week. Is there some credibility that you're able to immediately take on when you choose to partner or franchise with a company versus having to start from the ground up in that way, like for reputation's sake?
Well, credibility is one thing, but I think even more valuable than that is that most good franchisors are going to take you through an extensive training process. So
Mm,
it's not just that I invested in this brand. I signed the contract today, and tomorrow I'm going to market. That's
mm-hmm.
generally not how it works. They're going to take you through all the ins and outs of what it's going to take to launch that business, hopefully be by your side during that launch and provide you with extensive support during the launch to make sure you get off on the right foot. Yeah, it certainly shouldn't be a situation where you buy into a business and then you're just left to your own devices to go succeed.
Yeah.
Really, what you're investing in a franchise concept is that extensive training and support. So
Mm.
they're going to show you, hey, we have, let's just say, 100 franchisees out there. You know, 95% of them have been successful or whatever it might be. Here's the exact roadmap that they use to be successful. Now, it's probably going to vary for, any given market or any given demographic that you might be, selling your services to. But that roadmap is there, and that's something that
Mm-hmm.
you didn't have to develop, and it's something that's been proven time and time again. So
Yeah.
that's really where the value is, in my opinion.
So talking numbers too, are most franchise opportunities a one-time fee? Are we talking like recurring, profit sharing? Like all of those? Do you see all those exist or what's typical?
Yeah, what I would say what's typical is that most franchisors are going to charge an initial franchise fee, just a cost of doing business and investing in their system. And then beyond that, the vast majority of franchisors will have ongoing fees, royalty fees, potentially even what's called a brand fund or an advertising fund, where the franchisees all sort of contribute to this fund that helps provide marketing and advertising for the brand as a whole.
Hmm.
And some brands have, really nice arrangements where, that royalty will, diminish over time and that sort of thing. That's a little more rare. Most of the
Hmm.
royalties are there to stay, permanently. But
Yeah.
usually it's those are the three costs that you're seeing that are just going, you know, that are just cost to the franchisor. Your franchise fee, your royalties, and your brand fund if they've got one.
Good to know. Well, I'm sure that our listeners have learned a ton. If they want to keep learning more, they want your guidance, and they are serious about looking into franchising as their next business opportunity, what is the best place to connect with you and continue to learn?
Yeah, I've got a website. It's franchisebp.com, as in franchise blueprint. So
Cool.
franchisebp.com. I've got lots of free resources on the site there. They can schedule an initial call with me right there from the site. I also put a lot of content out on LinkedIn just related to franchising and some things from my own journey. Feel free to follow me on LinkedIn or check out the website. And I'll just add that I love doing this work. I got into this because I'm a huge advocate for entrepreneurship and business ownership, and I've seen how it can change my own life. And this is just something that I enjoy. And again, I try to bring as much transparency and clarity to people as I possibly can throughout this process.
Amazing. Cool. Thank you so much, Ryan, for sharing some of those ins and outs, those details that we might not have considered had we not had this conversation. We appreciate you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Kirsten. Really appreciate you having me.